Hello and welcome. In the workshop today we've got a Mac Pro trash can. This particular machine comes on sometimes and doesn't others. When it doesn't come on, you don't get a dong. You get these lights come on but no light on the power button. When it comes on, it runs and it works, and I managed to do tests on the graphics processor and done some benchmarking, and it's behaving itself. So what we're going to do, we're going to take it apart, have a look and try and work out why it's doing it. Then we're going to upgrade it. Then I'm going to edit this 4K video that I'm shooting now on it. So here we go. The first thing that I'm noticing is there's a lot of dust in here. Pretty original. It's got a pair of D500s in it. So it's a mid-spec machine, 16 gig of RAM and a 4-core processor. I've got 64 gig of genuine Apple memory. Processor upgrade and an SSD upgrade. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the screws out of this. Now, when we come to lift this, there is an aerial cable and a power cable. They're positioned right at the back here. I've got to put you down. Just freed it. He says, that's tight. Oh, that's not going to help. So I'm going to take out this clamp here, and that will allow me to remove the cable. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put you down. Okay, remove the screws. I'm just going to put my nail behind here and just unplug that, and then bring the aerial cable off. So we're going to have to clean this. That's not going to help with anything, and it's quite filthy inside. Instantly I'm seeing lots of dirt. So again, I'm going to take the screws out here. Look at this. Okay, I've just got a container here. I'm putting all the screws in. Oh lordy, lordy, lordy. This isn't going to help in any way, shape or form. It's a good thing because it means this machine's not been messed with in the last 10 years. But of course it's a bad thing as far as airflow is concerned and cooling is concerned. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put the base back on here so I can turn it around and stand it up, and then I think we're going to take at the start at the top, and we're going to take the power supply out as a first point. Just from it being upside down, other than that green bit of wire that's fallen out of it. So with the power supply, there's two little screws here and one on the opposite side. I'm going to take those out first of all. But before I do that, I'm going to take the memory out and lift that up. I'm not going to take the memory out, but I am going to lift them and just clear them. Now, I'm not going to go into what size all these various screwdrivers are because all the information's on places such as iFixit. Tiny little screw. And there's a repeat here, look. Will allow this plastic cover to be released. Yeah, it's not very clean in there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to release these screws here. That will allow me to take the power pack off, well, once the bottom connector is disconnected. Now, as you can see, the power pack is now free. So I'm going to turn it over and come back to you. Just remove the logic board, which is held in with two screws here and here. This is actually the first Mac Pro I've had that's had these screws in. The other one that I've got hasn't. I'm just going to lift these off. Small amount of pressure. You've just got to be very careful. You don't want to break anything. They come unplugged really easily, and you definitely don't want to break the graphics cards. What I'm doing is just behind these, there's a little gap down here. But big enough for me to get the end of this Torx in and just put a little bit of pressure on there. Okay, let's rotate this around. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the logic board from the CPU board. All I'm doing is just rocking it back and forth. There we go. Okay, now we can see that the filthy theme has continued. I'm going to disconnect the logic board. So using the same method with just a little bit of pressure. There we go. I'll put that to one side. I definitely think I'm on the trail of the fault. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the screws that hold the power supply to this port. There's 4 of them. Okay, so I've removed the 4 screws, which means the power supply starts to move. Now, interestingly, that plug there just pulled out. Makes you wonder if that's part of the problem. I'm going to just put a little bit of upward pressure on there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug this back in and see whether it repeats. It doesn't. It suggests to me that that plug was half out. Okay, final connector is final connectors here. I'm going to squeeze the top of that down and pull it. There we go, there's the back plane. I'm going to take that apart because in here is a 3-volt battery, and I feel that while I've got it stripped to this level I should change it. The power supply is filthy. I think I might take it apart and give it a clean, if nothing else. So what I'm going to do next with this is I'm going to give this a clean, and I'm just going to remove these 2 screws from this. There's one here. Now, I have a feeling there's cables in this. I'm just going to lift it up. Okay, there's a couple of cables there. To be honest, I'm not going to even bother disconnecting, and what I want to get to is this battery here. I'm going to change the 2032 for a brand spanking new battery. Simple. Okay, so the next job we're going to do is put back in screws there and there. Okay, I'm now going to put the power supply back on. I'm going to put these 4 screws back in place. These are these screws that have got like a mushroom head on them. So I'll put the power supply back on. All I'm going to do now is I'm just going to roughly rear bolt this. I'm going to plug the board back in, turn it back upside down, put the screws at the top, and let's see if we've got the fault. So I put the screws back in here. I'm now going to plug a fan in and we'll see what it does. So my fault is still there. When I press the power button, nothing happens and the fan isn't running. But I do get this illuminated. So it wasn't the battery, nor was it that bad connector. Before I go any further, I'm going to change the memory, just in case it's a memory issue. I put it back together with a single 16 gig. So I'll put the cover back on it and let's see what it does. Okay, so I've just tried it with just the memory in it. It's doing exactly the same. So I've got a CPU tray to try, and I've got a spare logic board to try in it as well. So my gut is I've got a power supply problem, but I haven't got a spare power supply. I've got a spare logic board and I've got a spare CPU board, so I'm going to try swapping them over, see if that resolves the issue. If not, then I think it's pull the power supply apart. Okay then, so we're back at this point. I've got no logic board in the bottom. We've tried 2 logic boards, that hasn't fixed it. I've took the power supply back out again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the processor and the CPU board out. I'm going to swap it over. So I've loosened the screws, but what you might notice is that 3 of these screws are still in place, and that is because when I've undone them, they've come out the heatsink rather than the clamp. So what I'm going to have to do is get a spanner, put a spanner on there and hold it and undo it. I ended up getting a vise and just holding them in a vise and their screws will come out really easily. One of the things for me is I notice when I've took this apart that the heatsink compound on this is pretty gunky. I'm not quite sure about its efficiency, so we'll be cleaning it off and we'll put some fresh on. So after a bit of messing about, I've changed the CPU board and I've now been greeted with it loading up. So there we go. So now I've got it working, I'm now going to upgrade the processor. I've got this one here that we're going to fit in it, which I think, if I remember right, there's a 10 core or an 8 core, I can't remember. It was, for clock speed, it was the best processor to go with. I'm going to run Adobe software on here, such as Premiere, and Premiere likes clock speed. So here we go. So now we've got it to load every time I turn it on. The plan now is to upgrade it, and I'm also going to take the graphics processors out and clean the thermal compound and put some new compound on them. So we're going to start in a minute, take this apart and put the upgraded parts in. Now I'm not going to go over taking all this apart again, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to strip it down into its component parts, and then I'm going to do a video showing you how to rebuild it from when it's all over the table. I think that's the most constructive use of your time watching this video. Okay, so we're going to start off with our core. You'll notice a couple of these have come out. So I'm going to clean off this heatsink compound. It's solid. So we're going to start off, just going to clean that off with a bit of kitchen cloth. There we go, just giving it a bit of a clean. Used a bit of Tim Clean on it, and there we go. That's going to be our starting point for rebuild. So the stuck bolts, I've got them out by putting them in my Apple vise. This is the vise I've used for delidding processors, and that's it. Look. There you go. Going to give these a clean and then we'll reinstall them. We'll have a look at this one. You can see the thermal interface material's got nothing stickiness left to it, and when we clean it off it will literally just crumble. I'm just going to use a piece of kitchen cloth, and as you can see it comes off like that. I'll clean the rest of that off camera. And there we go, it really has come off clean. It just came off like a piece of plasticine. It had dried out that much. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the graphics processors back on to the core, because obviously I'm concerned about them being off. Okay, so one of the first things I've got to do Okay, these have come from here, as you can see. So I'm going to put this back into here, and the other ones I'm just going to give them a tighten. Same will apply here. That gives me 4 nice clean pieces of equipment. Now what I want to do is build these up one at a time. So what I'm going to do, obviously I'm a bit concerned about the terminals on the side here, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top of a box like that. That'll give me the freedom to move it round, and we'll put the 2 graphics cards back in. That's that one. Now, I'm going to start off by just putting a small amount of thermal compound on. I'm not looking for it to be caked in it. You put too much on, it's not going to work. Offer that up onto there, just like that. Now, from experience, having taken one of these apart before, the first thing I'm going to do is put the power connectors in, because they can be a little bit fun. Okay, that's one started. So as you see, that was actually having a little argument with me. Just going to line that one up there. So I haven't tightened them up, I've just put them in place. Next thing I'm going to do is get the clamp off of the clamp up. Now, in our box, we've got bolts of 2 lengths. The short ones are for the graphics processors, the long ones are for the central processing unit. When you've got it stripped like this, you'll have 8 of each. So again, I'm going to start by just putting everything in loose. And the other thing I'm going to do is change for the correct screwdriver. I'm just pushing that down with my finger so I know I've got a good fixing. Now, I'm not hammering these up. I'm doing them as tight as I can do them using this screwdriver. Okay, so we turn it down, round, we'll do the other one. Okay, same procedure. Small amount of heatsink compound. Offer that in place. There's one. And there's number 2. Again, I'm not going to tighten them up until the machine's built and the power supply and everything's in place, otherwise you can end up with tension on stuff. Okay, 4 of them. There we go. We'll just tighten these up. Okay, I'm going to put this to one side and we'll do the processor. So here's our original processor. This is a E51650 version 2. And we're going to fit a E52667 V2. which I think is an 8-core, if I remember rightly. It got a good clock speed. So I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to take these 4 fixings out. I'm going to place it down on the processor. Again, I'm a little bit concerned they're a bit powder, so I'm going to put the processor on this cardboard box here. And remove these 4 screws. Going a crosswise. Pattern. Okay, so 1. 2. A lot of pressure on this actually. 3. 4. Okay, remove that and let's flip it over. I've set it on the box so we're not resting on the processor, sorry, not the processor, on the trays for the memory. Just going to give this a good clean. Again, communal garden kitchen towel. I'm going to change the processor. I'm going to take note of which way the arrow is. Place that to one side. Place the new one in. Job done. They won't go in backwards. Put that to one side. And then just going to offer that back in place. Doesn't appear to have a right or a wrong way, so I'm going to turn that over, put that back in. There we go, it locks it in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it in place and I'm going to put a couple of screws in it. These are just in a few turns, and then I'm going to turn over and I'm going to squeeze this with my fingers whilst starting the thread. Like that. Okay, I'm just going to now tighten them up. Again, going diagonally. A lot of force on this. When they get to the end of their travel, they do pretty much lock up. Okay. Last bit, last bolt. Okay. Let's bring the core back. Okay, there's the core. This is going to go on here, this way round, like this. Prior to doing that, I'm going to apply some heatsink compound. Again, just a small amount. Don't need lots of it. Trying to get this to drop into place. There you go. What I didn't want to do is spread the heatsink compound around everywhere, and I don't want to put pressure on the graphics cards. So again, get a start on one. Get a start on an opposite one, and then I'm going to stand it back up. That one in. That one in there. Okay, there we go. Just tighten them off by hand. And there we go. Graphics processor mounted, main processor mounted. Okay, next up, power supply. It literally lingers in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bottom on here. We'll turn it over and put the fixings in the top of the power supply. And there we go, we can see the top now. Now, we're just going to put the screws in a couple of turns, because all of this can move around independently. And what happens when you tighten these up is it will move that out of alignment. As you can see here. Okay, now they're all in, I'm going to tighten these off. Come round to the two graphics processors. And I'm going to do the same, just tighten them off. Okay, let's flip this back upside down. Next job is to put the logic board in. So we're just going to plug that into there. Line that up, plug it in, line these up, plug them in, and it needs two screws in the bottom there. I believe that are these. Okay, so we put these in, holding the logic board in place. Push that until it falls down there, and then we're going to just put the bottom track back in place and turn it round again. The next part I have to fit is my fan. As you can see, it's filthy, so I'm going to take that apart now. Okay, I'm going to start here by taking out these screws around the outside. Tiny little things. Okay, 1, 2, 3 by the looks of it, and that comes out of there and exposes the fan. A couple of moments with a paintbrush and it's clean. I wondered if you could take the fan blades off the motor, but it looks like it's a complete assembly. So here we go. Put the screws back in. Oh yeah, there we go. Mac Pro back. Going to connect this aerial cable up here to the back. Okay, then we're going to plug this back into here. Going to put this over the top of here. I'll put the screws back into it in a minute. Like that. Then I've got my 2 screws here. They're still actually in the little cover, so I'm hoping that I can just, yeah, there we go, look. Then back into place. And then off of the fanning, and just a bit of dust there. And I'm going to put some screws into it, into the sides, just hold everything together. I'm quietly confident that this will work. If not, I'm going to break it. There we go. A few more screws here. I might have just done something daft. That one doesn't want to go in. I haven't. Those astute of you will notice that I didn't put the screws in that little black cover. Fortunately, you can get to the black cover from the memory holes, so we'll deal with that in a moment. And look, there we go. Get the last screw in here. There we go. 2 screws to put in here. One there. One here. Stand it back up. .64 gig of RAM. Firmly lock it into place. Try to show you here going in. So slide it into into there. Get a little jiggle. Same here. Give it a little jiggle and then lock it in. Final thing to do is I'm going to put the original SSD back in it to do a boot test prior to upgrading. So I'm going to pop the original SSD into it. We'll pop the cover on and see if we've won. We got a dong. We got a logo. $64 gig, there we go. A little bit of messing about, sometimes they don't seat. But there we go, so we've got 3.6, 3.3, 8 core Xeon E5, 64 gig of memory and a D500, Power D500. So I'm quite happy with this as far as its performance is concerned. What I have done on it previously is I've run this for a bit, which gives me a benchmark on the graphics processor, but more relevantly it runs the graphics processor. I've had this running for a couple of hours, benchmarking just to make sure that the graphics processors behave, and it does. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the drive on it, and we're going to upgrade the drive on it and reinstall it. Okay. This is what's next for the drive. This is a 256 gig in here. I'm going for a terabyte, just because at the moment they're good value for money. Now there's two types of adapter you can buy, one like this and one like this. I don't know which is the best for the job, so I'm going to try this one first. Drive slides into it, and then it goes in. But you know what, there's no way you're going to get a screw into there. So let's have a look at the other one. The other one goes on the end like that. Goes in like the original drive, and you can get a screw in. So in this, that's the best bet. Now I'm also going to turn around and say that I've just done a 2015 MacBook, and I did exactly the same. The long adapter wouldn't go in the MacBook. Now, I'm aware that there's some firmware issues with some drives with not updating, etc. I'll report back to you. I'm going to put Monterey on this, and hopefully that will work. Okay, so that didn't work. I tried two different NVMe drives. The one we put in, which was a Western Digital Green, didn't work at all. It wouldn't recognise it. I fitted a Samsung one. It installed, but when I was trying to do updates on it, it was playing up and it just wasn't right. So I managed to pick up a 1 terabyte Apple drive, which has got the heatsink on for the Mac Pro, and it's working perfectly. And there we go. After a lot of mucking about, we've got it working beautifully. It's running on Monterey, and I am now going to put Premiere on here, and we will edit this video using Premiere. So I'm pleased to report that's edited the video really nicely, and for rendering time it's rendering at about 50 seconds per 1 minute of 4K video, and that's in H.264 ready to go onto YouTube. thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it gives you some insight into the Mac Pro.